Yo guys, what is going on? JPS back for another video, and today we are back with another Lost in the Pond video. We're going to be reacting to 5 ways British and American camping is very different. Yesterday I reacted to 6 ways British and American gas stations are very different. I'll put an annotation right there. Make sure you watch that video. It was also Lost in the Pond, so we're doing it 2 days in a row. If you're new to my channel, make sure you hit that like, subscribe button. Check out my Patreon. Links in the description. I post all my unblocked and extra reactions up there, so make sure you check that out. But let's get right into it. Also, subscribe to Lost in the Pond. This is the person I'm reacting to. He's hilarious. But let's get right into it. Let me know if you've been camping before. I have been camping multiple times.
Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to camping. This past Labor Day weekend, I decided to get away from it all and do what many Americans are doing at this time of year, pitching a tent at a campsite. While this was largely intended as a mini vacation and not the setup for a video, I did nonetheless have a lot of thoughts about the many ways in which camping differs between Britain and the United States. Here are 5 of them. I don't have any evidence for this, but I get the sense that singing around a campfire is a more widely accepted activity in the United States. Firstly, Americans are generally less inhibited when it comes to communal singing, though Brits begin to catch up once alcohol is introduced. Secondly, American horror films tell me that I'm definitely correct about this. Now, this is not to suggest that every American camping trip immediately devolves into a touring musical. Indeed, during this Labor Day weekend, I didn't even see a single guitar, but the notion of campfire songs certainly exists. Whenever I have heard it in action, the songs of choice range from John Denver's Take Me Home Country Roads to Everything by Johnny Cash. Having never been a Boy Scout, I struggle to think what the British equivalents might be. Several sources seem to indicate a leaning toward traditional songs like She'll Be Coming Round the Mountain or Old MacDonald, but I do expect a hearty rendition of Come On Eileen once the Heineken kicks in. I just realized that's not applicable to Boy Scouts officially. Merely from my own experiences of camping in both countries, I long ago fell under the misconception that glamping, a portmanteau of the words glamorous and camping, was chiefly an American thing. After all, it seemed that every American I spoke to couldn't quite believe that me and my British friends would sleep in our tents without the added comfort of an inflatable mattress. Roughing it was all part of the, glamour. It didn't help, of course, that I assumed that the word glamping was of American origin. I mean, the country does have quite a history of coining travel-themed portmanteaus like staycation and motel. But the first known instance of the word can be traced back not to the United States, but to the United Kingdom in 2005. Indeed, the practice of glamping goes back way further. In the 16th century, the Scottish Earl of Atholl hosted King James V up in the Highlands. The story goes that the king's visit took place inside a tent which was filled with amenities from the Earl's palace. And then there's the wild account of Henry VIII's meeting with Francis I of France. In 1520, they each attended the Field of the Cloth of Gold summit, in which almost 3,000 tents were erected in northern France with access to
I would stay in there, 100%. That looks nice.
In which almost 3,000 tents were erected in northern France with access to fountains that produced only wine. I can only imagine that these were installed to appease protests over the lack of public Wi-Fi. And today, glamping is practiced in both countries by people seeking a brief vacation in the great outdoors without breaking their backs in the process. And while America might not be able to claim the word glamping as its own, it makes up for it with these. When you move to the United States, much like any other country, you spend the first year or 5 asking the question, what is that? This was precisely my response upon hearing the word s'mores for the first time. For those not in the know, a s'more is a popular campfire concoction in which a roasted marshmallow is planted on top of a piece of chocolate and thrust between 2 graham crackers. Indeed, when it first entered American culture about 100 years ago, it was referred to then as a graham cracker sandwich. Shortly after, a recipe for the sandwich was posted in the 1927 iteration of Tramping and Trailing with the Girl Scouts under the name Some More. The contraction s'mores was common in American cookbooks by the 1950s. Now, while I certainly never encountered them in Britain, it wasn't unusual to roast and eat marshmallows by themselves. That said, since I left the motherland 13 years ago, there have been efforts among British bloggers and vloggers to recreate s'mores. With graham crackers and Hershey bars harder to come by across the pond, these are often substituted with digestives and Cadbury bars. While this might appease the odd, sometimes very odd American, it's a little more difficult to replicate this. As I tried falling asleep on the inhibitively comfortable mattress, the difference in nighttime ambience between the United States and my homeland was stark. Here in the Midwest, it's highly likely you'll be serenaded, as I was, by the sound of not just crickets,
bugs,
but cicadas. On the surface, this combination does sound quite soothing, but as someone whose brain comes alive after midnight, I made the mistake of recalling then and there that what I was hearing were mating songs. And let me tell you, nothing signals insomnia like the thought of cicadas going at it, especially when you consider that when it's all over, the males just die. It's awful. Even as the female delivers their offspring, the males are notably absent, a trait often shared with humans. After this, though, the female cicadas also die. It's just sad. Anyway, the ambience in Britain is quite different. In the absence of cicadas and crickets, it's the elements whose voices call loudest, as the nighttime winds let the tent know who's boss. This in turn prompts nearby trees to creak, and since Britain is often given to light precipitation, I spent many a camping trip falling asleep to the pitter-patter of rain. Of course, much of the US is no stranger to this. It's just that in the Midwest, and most certainly in the Deep South, rain tends to be heavier and less conducive to a good night's sleep. The same might also be said of these. It doesn't matter how many times I tell myself that this isn't the actual wild, there will always be a small part of my brain that wonders how you successfully fight off a bear. At least that has become the case since I started camping in America, and while Illinois isn't noted for its bear population, the same cannot be said of other places I've camped, like West Virginia. The mountain state is reportedly home to 8,000 black bears. Thankfully, though, black bear attacks on humans are extremely rare. But facts have no meaning when it's dark outside and everybody else is asleep. Another animal that British campers don't have to worry about is raccoons. I've actually lost count of the amount of times Americans have warned me to keep an eye on my cooler while camping, and that's because raccoons have quite the history of breaking into them and stealing your bratwursts. In extreme cases, they might even take the entire cooler, so it's a good idea to secure it with a bungee cord and affix the cooler to a tree and put the tree inside a safety deposit box and blast the whole thing off into space. We didn't encounter any this time. In Britain, the animal I most remember being concerned about while camping was the fox. And when I say concerned, I mean I thought about it for a second and then fell asleep. You see, Britain just doesn't have so-called dangerous animals on the level of the United States. In fact, it probably says a lot that foxes are also found throughout the United States and yet barely come up in this particular conversation. And why would they when America has bears, snakes, black widows, alligators, and pumas, all of whom, it should be said, are statistically very unlikely to trouble you while camping.
And politicians.
That's it for this episode. Let me know in the comments below if you have any plans to go camping. My name's Lawrence Brown. You can follow me on Twitter at
Yes, I do have plans to go camping eventually. The truth about he's right about the animals. Oh my gosh, the amount of raccoons we have, not just camping in general. Raccoons are all over the place out here, and the bears is true too. But yeah, let me know how many times you have gone camping. And was it enjoyable or terrible? I'm not gonna lie, camping, it's like flipping a coin. It could be a horrible night and you get no sleep, whether that's, you know, other campgrounds being loud or just not being comfortable or whatever the case may be. Or it could be an amazing time. It's really what you make of it and responding to like what happens. Like if you have a positive mentality, because a lot of things are not going to go your way when you're camping and setting up the campground, notably the tent. The tents, like, it's so hard to set up, and I just have this, you know, thing in my head where it's like people just get so mad when setting up a tent. Like I can just picture someone raging. And anyways, that was 5 ways British and American camping is very different. Sounds like British camping is much more pleasant, so maybe I'll have to try that. But thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.